like a horse with blinders on, or even a bag over our head. We've all been there before we gave our lives to Jesus. We were spiritually blind, unable to see God's truth all around us. For me, Christianity didn't make any rational sense. I had grown up in church. I always believed that there was a higher power, a God or something, but anything more than that, not so much. What did a man dying on a wooden cross 2,000 years ago have to do with me living today? I was sort of like that Roman governor Festus who told Paul in Acts 26, "You're out of your mind." I had gone to church regularly growing up as a youngster, and in my teen years, I had grown to believe in a higher power, but felt that he was distant, far removed from the world that I experienced with wars and famines and so forth. I knew that people were supposed to be kind to one another, you know, the Good Samaritan and the Golden Rule. I knew those stories from Sunday school lessons. But I noticed that people in the church were not very that different than people outside of the church. They seemed to smoke or drink or act the same as other people. Maybe I thought they were just in church more for socializing or out of habit. The church really didn't seem to offer anything special to me, and so when I left for college, I left the church behind as well, and I continued in my spiritual blindness. Growing up in New England and going to college in upstate New York, I had never really run into evangelical Christians on a personal basis. Or it was during the Jesus Revolution. I heard about that, and I knew where the Jesus freaks were on campus, but their evangelism on campus was pretty limited, and I avoided them religiously. Even growing up in a, liberal church, I had never really heard the true good news, the truth that Jesus had died on the cross for my sins. That whole idea was really a foreign concept to me for the first 25 years of my life. I really thought that religion was more about being kind to one another and doing good works, being generous with the less fortunate. My brother Richard had become an evangelical Christian when he had gone off to Arizona State and now worked and lived in Newport News. A few years later, after graduating from college myself, I had accepted a job with the city of Newport News and moved near him. I understand now that God was really moving me to Virginia for a purpose, his purpose, to get to know him. Rick had invited me to his church, and I met some of his most unusual friends. They were different, but in a real positive way. I was impacted by old-fashioned evangelism. Invite your family and friends to church to hear the gospel, and it worked. I saw people at his church actually bring Bibles with them when they came to church. I had never seen that before. Odd, I thought. Didn't the minister already have a Bible up front that he read from? I watched and listened, though, and these people seemed to be studying their Bibles during the sermon. They even wrote notes in their Bibles, too. As I got to know them, they seemed to really care for one another, to be serious about trying to live according to what they were being taught from those Bible passages, to live differently, to live holy, whatever that meant. I didn't really know much about the Bible then. I hadn't ever read it seriously. The lessons I heard growing up were always from the four Gospels, like the parables and the Sermon on the Mount. I didn't even know there was anything beyond Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the New Testament. But I tried to be a better person and even checked out liberal traditional denominations like I had been raised in. I'd even bumped into cults and universalism over the years, but they always seemed to be lacking something. I just didn't know what that was. It would take me a while to really understand that I was a sinner, that I was in trouble before God who was holy and righteous, and that the good news was that God came to earth in human form, willing to sacrifice himself for my sins, and to die on the cross, and that while I was yet a sinner, Jesus Christ died for those sins of mine. Slowly the blinders, the haziness of my worldview cleared up, and when I was 25, in November 1975 in Newport News, Virginia, I confessed my sins and repented. I asked God to forgive my sins, to be my Lord and Savior, and I was baptized. things started to change, I started to change. I understand that every person is different. For me, it was a personal invitation by my brother to witness evangelical Christianity at his church. And it was a slow process to learn basic Christianity at all, to study the Bible, to learn more about the God who made me, who loved me. And I remain very much a work in progress, flawed and sinful, but one of his children nevertheless. I can say my life has never been the same since that special day in Newport News. Thank you for your patience. You're probably wondering, what does all this have to do with personal evangelism or ERVA? This is all to say that God will use a variety of ways to bring people to him because he made every person different, just like our fingerprints or our DNA. What attracted me to God is going to be different than what might attract someone else, anyone else. For me, it was an invitation to my brother and the winsome spirit and the loving reception to fellowship by a group of Christians nearly half a century ago. It was very much a relational, a personal invitation to Christianity. The Bible teaching I was hearing in his church was being reflected in the lifestyle of his friends who were actively pursuing being Christ followers. Not perfect, but clearly different. And I wanted some of that different. Until then, in my mid-20s, I was lost and still wearing those blinders, not seeing what God was doing all around me. So don't be discouraged when someone you love or care for doesn't get it, doesn't understand your faith or your Christianity. Keep at it. Christianity is often foolishness to those who are lost until they're not. They have been building their world on sinking sand, and they cannot see God's truth, his love all around them. So here's a plan of action. 1, don't stop praying for that lost person that you were close to again and again. 2, and pray for the lost in our city too. They're all around us, and somebody is likely praying for their salvation too, just like you are for your family, your friends. And then 3, go. Just go to where they are and use any method, every method you can to help them understand their need for a Savior. You use your personal testimony, the bridge for spiritual laws, the way of the Master. Just invite them to come with you to church. Remember, their eternity is at stake. When that lost person finally hears the good news and they apply it to themselves, then all of a sudden it's like the fog parting and the blinders are removed. That's the way it was for me. And all of a sudden, they can see the light, the truth that God has been there all along. So here's an invitation. If you stayed with us this long, you likely have a heart for the lost and a passion for witnessing to others about Jesus. So please consider joining us at Evangelize RVA. We'd love to have you work alongside us for a day or for a season. We're certainly not the only ones doing evangelism in Richmond. We are one group of Christ followers from different churches, united in a desire to tell others about Jesus. You can connect with this ministry at evangelizerva.org or write to us at evangelizerva@gmail.com. And if you've liked this video, please hit like and subscribe. You know the drill. It will help bring others in connection with this ministry. And check out these other videos on this channel, including these. Richmond has so many spiritually lost people. Let's work together to take Jesus to every part of our city. And we'll see you in the next video.